The moment I realized the rescue signal was coming from inside our own ship, I understood we'd already lost. Commander Chen's hand was shaking when she killed the audio feed, and in the 13 years I'd served under her I'd never seen her hands shake, not during the Talos station collapse, not when we lost atmosphere over Kepler 442, not even when her daughter died back on Earth and we were 8 months from the nearest relay to send a message home. But now, standing in the bridge of the USCS Meridian with that signal pulsing through our systems like a heartbeat that wasn't ours, her fingers trembled as they moved across the console. "Lieutenant Reeves," she said, and her voice had that careful flatness that people use when they're trying very hard not to scream, "I need you to explain to me how we're receiving a distress call that's using our own ship's identification codes, our own encryption, and our own crew roster, but it's coming from a source point that's 1,500 meters directly below us." I stared at the readout because staring at her would have meant acknowledging that we both knew what this meant, or rather that we both knew we had no idea what this meant, and that was so much worse. We were in deep space, 3 weeks into a routine mineral survey of the Zeta Serpentis system, and there was nothing below us except the slow-turning dust of a protoplanetary disk that wouldn't coalesce into actual planets for another million years. "It has to be a reflection," I said, because saying something was better than saying nothing, some kind of echo effect from the disk's magnetic field. Chen pulled up the spectrographic analysis without responding. And we both watched as it confirmed what we already knew, that the signal wasn't bouncing off anything, it was originating from a fixed point in space that our sensors insisted was empty. "Wake everyone," she said finally. "Full emergency protocol. I want eyes on every system, every sensor, every porthole if that's what it takes." By the time the crew assembled in the bridge, the signal had changed. It was still our distress code, still our encryption, but now it was deteriorating, breaking apart into fragments that reformed into patterns that almost made sense but didn't quite, like hearing someone speak a language you think you should understand but the words keep sliding away from meaning. Our communications officer, Park, had tears running down his face as he listened to it through his headset, and when I asked him what was wrong he just shook his head and said, "It's trying to tell us something but it doesn't have the words anymore," which was possibly the most unsettling sentence I'd ever heard in my life. Dr. Okonkwo, our chief scientist, had already run every scan she could think of and then invented 3 more, and the results were impossible in ways that made my head hurt. "There's something there," she said, pulling up a 3-dimensional model that showed our ship and the empty space below us, "but it's not reflecting anything. It's not emitting radiation. It's not affecting the gravitational field. It exists purely as an absence, like someone cut a hole in space and the hole has a shape." "What shape?" Chen asked. Okonkwo's hands moved across her controls, enhancing the image, and we all leaned forward to see what the sensors were showing us. The hole was ship-shaped. Specifically, it was shaped exactly like our ship. "That's a glitch," Park said, but nobody responded because we were all thinking the same thing, that if it was a glitch it was a very specific glitch and glitches weren't usually that precise. Chen ordered us to move, to put distance between us and whatever was down there, and for exactly 4 minutes it worked. We burned our engines and watched our position change on the displays, watched the distance grow between us and that impossible absence in space, and then we watched as the distance began to shrink again. "We're still accelerating," our pilot Torres said, and she sounded confused rather than scared, which meant she hadn't understood yet. "I'm reading continuous thrust, navigation confirms we're on course, but the relative position to the anomaly is decreasing." "It's following us," I said. "No," Okonkwo said quietly, staring at her screens with the kind of intensity that meant she was seeing something she wished she wasn't. "We're not moving at all. Or rather, we're moving, but we're also not moving. I'm reading our position relative to Zeta Serpentis and it's changing exactly as it should be. I'm reading our position relative to the anomaly and it's not changing at all. We're in 2 places simultaneously." That's when the second signal started. This one wasn't using our codes. This one wasn't using any codes anyone had ever heard before, a cascade of information that poured through our communications array like water through a broken dam, and Park yanked his headset off so hard it left red marks on his skin. "It's not communication," he said, breathing hard. It's something else. It's like instructions. Like someone explaining how to build something but the something hasn't been invented yet. Chen told him to make a recording, to capture everything, and then she turned to me with an expression I couldn't read. How long until we can jump to FTL, she asked. I checked the navigator even though I knew the answer. 18 hours. We need to clear the gravitational influence of the system first. We don't have 18 hours, she said, and she was looking at something on her private command screen. Something she wasn't sharing with the rest of us. Lieutenant, I need you to go to Medical Bay 3 and check on something for me. Don't tell anyone else. Don't use the comms. Just go and look and come back. The way she said it made my stomach drop, but I went, because orders were orders and because some part of me already knew what I was going to find. Medical Bay 3 was in the lower decks, where we kept the long-term stasis pods for crew members who got sick or injured beyond our ability to treat in deep space. There were 15 pods, and they were all supposed to be empty. 14 of them were. The 15th contained Commander Chen. I stood there for what felt like hours but was probably only seconds, looking at her face behind the glass, reading the pod status display that showed she'd been in stasis for 3 weeks, since the day we'd entered the Zeta Serpentis system, and my brain was doing that thing where it tries very hard to make something make sense and just keeps failing. When I got back to the bridge, Chen was exactly where I'd left her, and she looked at my face and nodded like I'd confirmed something. You found her, she said. Yourself, I corrected, because what else do you say? I found you. The real you. You've been in stasis for 3 weeks. Yes, she said. I know. I woke up down there about an hour ago. The pod opened on its own. I came up here and found myself already standing at command. Or rather, I found this. She gestured at herself like she was indicating a piece of furniture. It responded to me. It knew things only I would know. It insisted it was me. And then it showed me the security footage. She pulled up a video on the main screen and we all watched as the Chen who was currently standing in front of us materialized in the bridge command station 3 weeks ago, simply appearing between one frame and the next like someone had edited the footage, except the timestamp was continuous and none of the other systems had recorded any kind of temporal anomaly. The crew in the video didn't react, didn't seem to notice anything wrong, and Video Chen immediately began giving orders like she'd been there all along. That's not possible, Torres said. None of this is possible, Okonkwo said, and she pulled up another scan, this one showing the interior of our ship, and I felt something cold settle in my chest. There were 2 copies of every crew member aboard. One set moving through the ship doing normal tasks, and one set that showed up as those same absent spaces in the shape of people that we'd first detected below the ship. Where are they? Park asked. In the walls, Okonkwo said. In the floors. In the spaces between spaces. They're occupying the same physical location as us but displaced by some fraction we can't measure. And they're all in stasis. All except the commander. Why me? Chen asked, the real Chen, the one who'd woken up. I don't know, Okonkwo said. But I think that's what the signal is. I think it's trying to explain. The deteriorating distress call had resolved into something else now, a steady pattern that reminded me of a heartbeat or maybe a countdown, and Park was trying to translate it into something we could understand. It's not language, he said. It's more like a process. A description of something happening in sequence. There's a beginning point, and then there's a branching, and then there's a... He trailed off, staring at his screen. A selection. Something choosing which branch to follow. We need to leave, Torres said. Now. I don't care about the FTL restrictions, we need to burn everything we have and get away from whatever this is. But when she tried to fire the engines, nothing happened. The ship didn't respond. The controls were dead. And that's when the lights changed. Not went out, changed, shifted into a spectrum that made my eyes hurt and my brain try to insist I wasn't seeing what I was seeing. The walls of the bridge began to thin, becoming translucent, and through them I could see the other version of the bridge, the one that was occupied by those absent space versions of ourselves. They were moving. They were waking up. "It's making us real," Okonkwo whispered, and I didn't understand what she meant until I saw my own face looking back at me from the other side of that thinning wall, a face that was mine but also wasn't, because it was made of nothing, made of the space where I should be but wasn't. "It's a collision," Park said, and his voice had gone very calm, the way people's voices go when they've stopped being afraid and started being fascinated by their own death. "We're occupying the same space as ourselves but displaced in time. We've been displaced this whole time. Ever since we entered the system. What we thought was the present is actually some kind of echo, and now the echo is catching up to the real timeline." The other Chen, the one who'd been commanding the ship for 3 weeks, turned to look at the real Chen and smiled, and it was a sad smile, a knowing smile. "I remember this," she said. "I remember being you, waking up in that pod, coming up here. I remember what happens next." "What happens next?" the real Chen asked. "We merge," the other Chen said. "We collapse back into a single timeline. Most of us do. But one of us has to stay displaced. One of us has to remain in the echo to anchor the connection. That's what the signal is explaining. That's what it's always been explaining. This isn't an anomaly. This is a choice point. A place where reality branches, and something has to choose which branch continues." "I don't understand," I said, but I was lying, because I was starting to understand, and understanding it was worse than not knowing. "The ship," Okonkwo said, and she was staring at something on her sensors, something that had just appeared. "There's another ship. A real one. Not an absence. It's massive. It's been here the entire time but we couldn't see it because we were looking from the wrong side of the displacement." She pulled up the image and we all stopped talking. The thing on the screen wasn't like any ship humans had ever built. It was enormous, easily 100 times our size, and it had a shape that my mind kept trying to make sense of and couldn't, like looking at an optical illusion that refused to resolve. And it was old. Even through the strange lighting and the dimensional displacement, I could see that it was old in a way that made our ship look like it had been built yesterday. "That's what's creating the displacement," Okonkwo said. "That's what's generating the choice point. It's some kind of... I don't know what to call it. A probability engine? Something that generates multiple timelines and then selects which one to make real." "Why?" Torres asked. "To find the right one," the other Chen said, the Chen who'd been commanding our ship for 3 weeks, the Chen who was starting to look more real as the walls grew thinner. "To find the timeline where we make the right choice." "What choice?" I asked. The signal changed again, resolving into clarity for just a moment, and Park gasped. "It's asking," he said. "It's asking which one of us stays behind. Which one of us anchors the echo so the rest can continue in the real timeline. It needs a volunteer." We all looked at each other, and I watched as understanding moved through the crew like a wave. Someone had to stay in the displaced timeline, had to remain in that half-real state between what was and what could be, had to anchor the connection so the rest of us could collapse back into normal space. And whoever stayed would be alone, forever, in a ship full of ghosts of people who almost existed. "I'll do it," the other Chen said. "I already have. I've been doing it for 3 weeks. I thought I was the real one, but I was always the echo. I was always the one who stayed behind." "No," the real Chen said. "No, I won't let you. I won't let myself do this. There has to be another way." But there wasn't another way, and we all knew it, because the walls were almost transparent now and the other versions of ourselves were standing up from their stations, moving toward us, and where we touched the boundaries began to dissolve. Park merged first, his hand passing through the transparent wall and touching his other self, and he gasped and stumbled back, and for a moment he was in both places at once, and then he was just in one place, solid and real and crying. "I remember both," he said. "I remember being in stasis. I remember being awake. I remember all 3 weeks twice, from both sides. How is that possible? But Okonkwo was already merging too, and Torres, and one by one the crew collapsed back into a single timeline, remembering 3 weeks they'd lived and 3 weeks they'd been sleeping, holding both sets of memories like a double-exposure photograph. I felt myself touch my other self, and the sensation was like falling and flying at the same time, like being pulled apart and pushed together, and suddenly I had 2 sets of memories, 2 sets of experiences, and they were both real and both true and both mine. I remembered being in stasis. I remembered working on the bridge. I remembered the moment we'd entered the system and how something had split us, had created 2 versions of our ship, 2 versions of our crew, one displaced from the other by some fraction of time too small to measure but large enough to matter. And I remembered the other Chen, the one who'd stayed awake, the one who'd commanded the Echo ship while we slept, making sure we'd be ready for this moment. "Go," she said, and she was smiling again, that same sad smile. "Go while you still can. The displacement is collapsing. You have maybe 5 minutes before you're stuck here with me forever." "I can't leave you," the real Chen said. "You're not leaving me," the other Chen said. "I'm staying behind by choice. Someone has to anchor the connection. Someone has to make sure the timeline stabilizes. And it has to be me. It's always been me. Since the moment we arrived, since the moment that thing out there split us apart, I was always going to be the one who stayed. I just didn't know it yet." The massive alien ship was visible through all the walls now, surrounding us, and I could see movement inside it, shapes that might have been crew or might have been machinery or might have been something I didn't have words for. The signal had resolved into something like music, a pattern that felt less like sound and more like meaning being poured directly into my brain, and I understood with a clarity that was almost painful that this had happened before, that this ship had been here for thousands of years creating choice points, generating branches in reality, searching for something across countless timelines. "What's it looking for?" I asked. The other Chen looked at the alien ship, and then back at us. "The timeline where it finds what it lost," she said. "Or maybe the timeline where it becomes what it needs to be. I don't think it knows anymore. I think it's been searching so long it's forgotten what it's searching for. But it can't stop. Every ship that enters this system becomes part of the search, becomes another branch in the tree of possibilities, and someone has to stay behind to anchor each branch or the whole structure collapses." "That's insane," Torres said. "That's horrifying." "Yes," the other Chen agreed. "But it's also beautiful, in a way. Somewhere out there, in some timeline we can't see, there's a version of us that found what we were looking for. A version where everyone survived. A version where we made it home. This timeline isn't that one. But it's still real. I'm still real. And I'll be here, holding the door open, making sure the structure doesn't fall." She turned to face the alien ship, and as she did her form began to change, becoming less solid, more like the absent spaces we'd first detected. "You need to go now," she said. "The engines will respond once you're fully collapsed. Burn hard and don't look back. Don't try to rescue me. Don't come back to this system. Just go home and remember that somewhere, in the spaces between what is and what could be, there's a version of your commander who loved you enough to stay behind." And then the walls were solid again, and she was gone, and we were alone in our bridge and the controls were responding and Torres was already burning the engines with everything we had. I ran to the porthole and looked back as we accelerated away, and for just a moment I saw it clearly, that massive alien ship with our Meridian held inside it like a pearl in an oyster, and standing on our bridge was the Chen who'd stayed behind, saluting as we fled. The signal followed us for 3 days as we ran for the edge of the system, that musical pattern that was also a message, and Park finally translated it completely. "It's a log," he said, showing us the results. "A record of every ship that's entered this system, every crew that's been split into choice points, every person who's volunteered to stay behind. There are thousands of them. Tens of thousands. All anchoring their timelines, all holding the structure together, all waiting for the ship to find what it's lost. What did it lose? I asked. Park showed me the last part of the message, the part that played on repeat beneath all the other patterns. It was a name, or what might have been a name in a language that had been dead for longer than humans had existed. And it meant, as close as Park could translate it, the timeline where we didn't become this. We made it out of the system. We jumped to FTL. We made it home. But every night I dream about that moment in the bridge when I merged with myself, when I remembered being two people at once, and I wonder how many other versions of me are out there in the spaces between timelines, in the gaps between what is and what could be, standing on the bridges of ships that almost existed, crewed by people who are almost real, anchoring realities that almost matter. And I wonder if the Chen who stayed behind dreams too, and if in her dreams she ever makes it home, ever finds the timeline where none of this happened, where we entered the Zeta Serpentis system and found nothing at all, just empty space and dust and the slow dance of protoplanetary formation. I wonder if in her dreams she's free, or if she's still standing there, saluting into the darkness, holding the door open for versions of us that will never stop running, never stop fleeing from the choice points we don't even know we're making, never stop being split apart by something vast and ancient and searching for something it lost so long ago it's forgotten what loss means. The moment I realized the rescue signal was coming from inside our own ship, I understood we'd already lost, but what I didn't understand until now is that we'd also already won, in some timeline, in some version of events we'll never see, and the price of that victory is that someone has to remember all the timelines where we failed, all the versions of us who didn't make it home, all the Chens who stayed behind so that somewhere, somehow, one version of us could continue. Sometimes I still hear that signal in my sleep, that musical pattern that sounds like a heartbeat that isn't mine, and I know with absolute certainty that she's still there, in the spaces between what is and what could be, commanding a ship full of ghosts and holding open a door to a timeline we'll never visit, making sure that somewhere in the infinite branching structure of possibility, there's still a path that leads home. We made it back. We survived. But we left part of ourselves behind in that system, and not just the commander who volunteered to stay, but something essential and irreplaceable, some piece of our certainty that the choices we make are the only ones that matter, that the timeline we're in is the only one that's real. Now we know better. Now we know that every choice is a branching point, every decision creates echoes, and somewhere in the vast machinery of that ancient ship still searching through the wreckage of its own past, someone is always staying behind to anchor the structure, to hold the door open, to make sure the search continues even though nobody remembers what they're searching for anymore. That's what the signal was really saying, all along. That's what the Chen who stayed behind understood before any of us did. The moment we entered that system, the moment we were split into choice points and asked to decide which timeline would continue and which would become an echo, we were already part of something so much larger than ourselves that our survival or failure didn't matter in any traditional sense. What mattered was that someone chose. What mattered was that someone stayed. What mattered was that the structure held, that the door remained open. That the search continued into whatever timeless space that ship occupies now, that place between all possible realities where the lost can still be found if you're willing to look forever. I visit the memorial we built for her when we got back to Earth, a plaque with her name and dates and the simple inscription, "Lost in the service of exploration," and I want to laugh every time I see it because it's such a pale shadow of the truth. She's not lost. She's exactly where she chose to be, doing exactly what she chose to do, and calling it a loss is like calling an anchor a prisoner of the ship it holds in place. But I don't laugh because the truth is too big and too strange and too sad to fit into any memorial we could build, and because somewhere in the spaces between what is and what could be, there's a version of me that stayed behind instead of her, a version that's standing on that bridge right now commanding a ship full of ghosts and holding open a door I'll never walk through, and that version of me deserves better than my laughter, deserves better than my pity, deserves to be remembered as what it really is, the price we pay for the privilege of believing our choices matter, for the comfort of thinking the timeline we're in is the one that's real, for the luxury of going home and pretending we understand what that means. The moment I realized the rescue signal was coming from inside our own ship, I understood we'd already lost, but what I know now is that losing was always part of the equation, that the alien vessel orbiting Zeta Serpentis has been collecting losses for thousands of years and weaving them into something that might eventually look like an answer. And that somewhere in that vast accumulation of abandoned timelines and volunteered anchors and people who chose to stay behind so others could continue, there's a pattern emerging that we're not equipped to see, a purpose unfolding that we're not meant to understand, and a destination being approached by the slowest, strangest method imaginable, by searching every possible path and remembering everyone who marked the way.